Here is something that will completely change the way you think about the world we live on. Human beings have sent spacecraft to the edge of the solar system. We have mapped the surface of Mars in extraordinary detail. We have photographed galaxies billions of light years away. But right here on our own planet, beneath the surface of the ocean that covers more than 70% of the Earth, we have explored less than 20% of what is down there. The other 80% remains completely unknown to us, unseen, unmapped, full of creatures and landscapes and geological features we have never laid eyes on. The deepest, darkest, most mysterious place in the known universe is not somewhere out in space. It is right here on Earth. And this is what we know about it. Most of us grow up thinking of the ocean as something familiar. We see it on holiday. We eat fish that came from it. We watch waves crash on a beach and feel like we understand what the ocean is. But the ocean we see from the shore, even the ocean we look at when we look at a map, is just the very top layer of something almost incomprehensibly vast and deep and strange. The average depth of the ocean is around 3.7 kilometers, but in its deepest points, it plunges to nearly 11 kilometers below the surface, deeper than Mount Everest is tall. And in those depths, conditions exist that are so extreme, so dark, and so crushing that we have barely begun to understand what lives there and what is happening. Today, we are going to go deep into what we know about the ocean, and more importantly, into just how much we do not know. Before anything else, it is worth trying to understand just how enormous the ocean actually is, because most people genuinely have no real sense of its scale. The ocean covers around 361 million square kilometers of the Earth's surface. That's about 71% of the entire planet. But the surface area is almost the less impressive number. It's the volume that is truly staggering. The total volume of all the water in the Earth's oceans is around 1.335 billion cubic kilometers. And within that enormous volume, the ocean is divided into distinct layers, each with completely different conditions. The sunlit zone near the surface, where light penetrates and most familiar sea life exists. Below that, the twilight zone, where light fades almost completely and the pressure begins to build seriously. Then the midnight zone, where no sunlight reaches at all, and the water is permanently close to freezing. Then the abyss, the vast, deep ocean floor, covering more of the Earth's surface than all the continents combined. And finally, the Hadal zone, the deepest ocean trenches, where pressures reach more than 1,000 times what we experience at sea level. Each of these layers is a completely different world, and most of them we have barely visited. Here is the comparison that puts everything into perspective. NASA has spent decades and hundreds of billions of dollars exploring space. We have sent probes to every planet in the solar system. The Voyager spacecraft, launched in 1977, has now traveled beyond the boundary of our solar system entirely. We have detailed maps of the Moon, of Mars, of asteroids and moons around distant planets. In many ways, we know more about the surface of Mars than we know about the floor of our own ocean. The reason comes down to the practical difficulty of ocean exploration compared to space exploration. In space, there is no pressure working against you. A spacecraft can travel vast distances through vacuum without being crushed or damaged by its environment. But in the deep ocean, the pressure increases by roughly 1 atmosphere for every 10 meters of depth. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest point in any ocean at around 11.9 kilometers below the surface, the pressure is over 1,000 times greater than at sea level. Building equipment that can operate under those conditions is extraordinarily difficult and expensive. Even the most advanced deep-sea submersibles can only carry small crews for limited periods, and the cost of operating them makes deep ocean exploration far rarer than most people realize. Of all the reasons the deep ocean captures the imagination so completely, it is perhaps the creatures that live there that are most astonishing, because life in the deep ocean has evolved under conditions so extreme and so different from anything on the surface that the animals down there look and behave in ways that seem almost impossible. Take the giant squid. For most of human history, the giant squid was considered a mythological creature, a sea monster from sailor stories with no basis in reality. Then in 2004, Japanese researchers captured the first photographs of a living giant squid in its natural deep ocean habitat. It was real, it was enormous, and it had been living in the deep ocean completely unseen by human eyes for the entire history of our species. The giant squid can grow to around 13 meters in length and has eyes the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes of any animal on Earth, evolved to detect the faint bioluminescent light of other creatures in the permanent darkness of the deep ocean. And the giant squid is far from the strangest thing down there. The barrel-eye fish has a completely transparent head with tubular eyes that can rotate to look directly upward through its own skull. The anglerfish, already famous for its glowing lure on its head, has a reproductive strategy so bizarre that scientists struggled to believe it when they first described it. The male anglerfish, when it finds a female, bites into her body and physically fuses with her, merging his bloodstream with hers, eventually becoming little more than a sperm-producing attachment on her body. There are jellyfish in the deep ocean that are effectively immortal, able to revert back to their juvenile state when stressed and restart their life cycle indefinitely. There are fish that produce their own light, worms that feed on the bones of dead whales, shrimp that thrive in boiling water around hydrothermal vents where temperatures exceed 400 degrees Celsius. Scientists estimate that there may be as many as 2 million species living in the ocean that have never been identified or described. Every time a deep ocean expedition takes place, it returns with photographs of creatures that have never been seen before. The deep ocean is not an empty, dark void. It is possibly the most densely packed ecosystem of strange and extraordinary life on the entire planet. Most people have a rough mental image of what the ocean floor looks like, a flat, sandy plain stretching off into the distance. The reality is completely different, and in many ways more dramatic than anything on the surface of the Earth. The ocean floor contains mountain ranges longer than any on land, valleys deeper than any canyon above water, vast plains, active volcanoes, and geological features that have never been properly mapped or explored. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is a mountain range that runs for around 16,000 kilometers along the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, longer than the Andes, Rockies, and Himalayas combined. It sits at the boundary between tectonic plates that are slowly pulling apart, and it is one of the most geologically active places on Earth. Along its length, hydrothermal vents pump superheated, mineral-rich water into the ocean, creating environments that support thriving ecosystems with no sunlight whatsoever, communities of life that run entirely on chemical energy rather than solar energy. When these ecosystems were first discovered in 1977, it genuinely changed the way scientists thought about where life could exist on Earth. Not just on Earth, but potentially on other worlds in our solar system. The Mariana Trench, located in the western Pacific Ocean, is the deepest place on Earth. At its lowest point, called Challenger Deep, the ocean reaches a depth of around 10,935 meters. To put that in terms that are easier to picture, if you placed Mount Everest at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the summit would still be more than 2 kilometers below the surface. Fewer people have visited the bottom of the Mariana Trench than have walked on the surface of the moon. And what's down there, the geology, the biology, the chemistry of the water, is still only partially understood. Beyond its mystery, the ocean performs functions that are absolutely essential to life on Earth, and that most people never think about at all. The ocean produces around 50% of all the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere, more than all the rainforests combined, through the photosynthesis of microscopic organisms called phytoplankton that live near the surface. Every second breath you take came from the ocean. The ocean also absorbs enormous amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, acting as one of the planet's most important buffers against climate change. It absorbs around 30% of all the carbon dioxide that human activity produces, and around 90% of the excess heat that greenhouse gases trap in the atmosphere. Without the ocean, the warming of the planet would be happening far faster than it already is.
The ocean also drives the weather systems that determine rainfall patterns across the entire planet. Ocean currents carry warm water from the tropics toward the poles and cold water back toward the equator, regulating temperatures across huge areas of land that would otherwise be either inhabitably hot or impossibly cold. We are changing the ocean in ways that are significant and, in some cases, potentially irreversible. Ocean temperatures are rising as the planet warms, and warmer water holds less oxygen, which affects the marine life that depends on oxygen dissolved in the water. Ocean acidification, caused by the ocean absorbing excess carbon dioxide, is changing the chemistry of the water in ways that affect the ability of shellfish, corals, and other marine organisms to build the calcium carbonate shells and skeletons they need to survive. Coral reefs, which cover less than 1% of the ocean floor but support around 25% of all marine species, are bleaching and dying at rates that have alarmed marine biologists around the world. Plastic pollution has reached every corner of the ocean, including the deepest trenches where researchers have found plastic bags and food wrappers at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. And industrial fishing has removed species from parts of the ocean far faster than they can reproduce, changing the balance of ecosystems that took millions of years to develop. We are reshaping the ocean before we have even begun to understand what it contains. Despite everything we do not know, the pace of discovery in the ocean is genuinely remarkable, and what is being found continues to surprise even the scientists doing the work. In recent years, deep-sea expeditions have discovered entire mountain ranges on the ocean floor that were previously unknown. New species are identified on almost every deep ocean dive. In 2020, researchers exploring the ocean off the coast of Australia discovered a ribbon-shaped creature measuring 45 meters in length, potentially the longest animal ever recorded, a species of siphonophore that had been living in the deep ocean completely unknown to science. Researchers have also discovered that the deep ocean floor contains vast reserves of minerals and rare earth elements, including manganese, cobalt, copper, and nickel, that are essential for making batteries and electronics that modern technology depends on. This has created an entirely new and deeply controversial debate about deep-sea mining, whether it is possible to extract these resources without causing irreversible damage to ecosystems we have never mapped or understood. It is a question that humanity will need to answer in the coming decades. The ocean covers most of our planet. It produces half the air we breathe. It regulates our climate. It feeds hundreds of millions of people, and we have seen less than a fifth of it. What that tells us is that even on a planet we think we know well, even in a time when satellites can photograph any point on the Earth's surface in extraordinary detail, genuine mystery and genuine discovery are still possible. The deep ocean is a reminder that the world is far stranger and far richer than our everyday experience of it suggests. Subscribe to Unfolded. We'll see you in the next one.